that local government officials were on the boat when it sank. We start this hour as China and Australia have signalled a new phase in their relationship. This as President Xi Jinping hosted Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese in Beijing. The visit marks the highest level engagement between the two countries in years and comes as China aims to position itself as a stable global trade partner, in contrast to rising tariffs and isolationist policies of US President Donald Trump. Let's have a listen to what both leaders have said.
在双方共同努力下，中澳关系走出低谷，实现转换，给两国人民带来实实在在的。
I note your comments in your opening remarks about seeking common ground while sharing differences. That approach has indeed produced very positive benefits for both Australia and for China. It's important we have these direct discussions on issues that matter to us and to the stability and prosperity of our region. As you and I have agreed previously, dialogue needs to be at the centre of our relationship, and I welcome the opportunity to set out Australia's views and interests and our thinking on how we can maintain peace, security, stability and prosperity in our region.
Well, President Xi made it clear that China is ready to deepen ties and promote the further development of bilateral relations. Albanese, in response, emphasised Australia's desire for progress under their decade-old free trade deal, while noting that national interests would remain central to Canberra's approach. Dialogue needs to be at the centre of our relationship, Albanese stated, highlighting key concerns around peace, security, energy transition and regional prosperity. Xi noted that relations between the two nations had risen from setbacks and turned around, bringing tangible benefits to both sides. Albanese is also expected to meet Chinese Premier Li Qiang today, with trade, investment and strategic tensions on the agenda. Albanese's six-day trip includes a high-level business delegation with Australian mining giants like Rio Tinto, BHP and Fortescue, meeting Chinese steel and energy leaders. Executives from BlueScope Steel, BYD, Baowu Steel and COFCO joined Tuesday's roundtable talks to discuss industry cooperation. Despite the thaw in ties, long-standing tensions persist, including disputes over military activity, critical minerals and the jailing of Australian writer Yang Hengjun. Well, joining us to discuss the significance of this discussion and also the ramifications amidst global instability, Craig Hodges, an Australian political analyst who's joining us from Adelaide, Australia. Craig, thank you ever so much for being here with us. We've heard some of the responses, some of the comments made between President Xi and Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. What's your initial thoughts to this meeting amidst so much global insecurity?
Yeah, it's a very important issue, I think, for Australia, Joshua, given the significance of Australia's trading relationship with China. Visiting Xi Jinping ahead of visiting Donald Trump is going to mean that the Americans are going to be very interested in the proceedings over these 6 days during the China visit. I think it's a very wise move to be going to China, particularly with such a senior business delegation, and framing this trip as being one focused on trade and investment. Of course, that can't ignore the fact that in the background there will be human rights discussions and there will be sensitivities from the China side around the lease of the Darwin port. So very complex discussions need to take place. But today we've seen a great first meeting in the Great Hall of the People in Beijing, and all reports from both sides, both from Australian reporters on location and from the Chinese Daily, appears that the meeting and discussions appear at this stage to be cordial.
Yes, absolutely. It does seem to be cordial, but of course there are still differences there. A big issue over recent military drills that impacted Australian and New Zealand airlines, of course, in the midst of wider regional instability. We look at Taiwan, we look at China's relations with countries like the Philippines. How pivotal of an issue is this? as Albanese's visit continues. Do you think that will be a point of discussion and something that Australia is concerned about?
Well, I think the discussion will revolve around Australia's national interest. Of course, there's many elements to what defines a national interest. Security is important. You made mention of the recent Chinese naval visit and circumnavigation of Australia. It really did shake a lot of the security community, particularly when that naval visit shifted to a posture of live fire in the Tasman between New Zealand and Australia. Of course, they were in international waters, they're well within their right. There was some controversy over the notification of that live fire exercise, primarily that not enough notice was given. But these are minor points. There's bigger geostrategic and geopolitical issues that would be discussed. I don't think that will be a sticking point in discussions ongoing there in Beijing between Xi Jinping and Anthony Albanese.
Craig, let's have a look then at one of those points that might be a big topic. Trade, of course, has been thrown into so much uncertainty with President Donald Trump's tariff action. Of course, that August the 1st deadline upcoming. But President Xi has tried to position China as an alternative to US trade. Do you think there really is an opportunity here for the Australian governments and the Australian people ultimately to rely more heavily on China, even though that they do also already?
Well, if you compare the trading relationships between Australia and the US and Australia and China, obviously trade relations with China are predominant, just on the scale, 1/3 of the export goes to China. So that relationship is important. Also, the future with China is very bright. I mean, if you look at China's demand for iron ore, for coal, but also their export market for green energy technology, whether that be windmills or solar panels, Australia has the potential, with the support of China, to re-engineer its economy and look at, seriously, topics such as green steel. Now, this is a talking point not only with China, but also with our near neighbours, the ASEAN neighbours to the north of Australia. And at the same time, the tariffs causing friction between Australia and the US, and also they are shifting away from taking a more environmental approach to their industries and re-embracing things like coal. So, look, I think it's pretty clear if Australia sees its future being net zero focused and the industry wants to develop its export market from being raw mineral export orientated to processing green steel, combining green energy production plus the processing of steel, relationship with China is going to go from strength to strength. The trade relationship with the US is one revolved around security, high tech, etc. But there's a lot more uncertainty, particularly when you look at these tariffs that are on and off again. So, yeah, it's very, very difficult to compare the two relationships at this critical time.
Yes, absolutely, Craig. Lots of uncertainty, of course, around trade. But what we do know is Anthony Albanese's trip in China will continue. And of course, we will bring all of those developments. Craig, if you stay with us for